Hello, 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 and welcome to Survivor NSFW Rewind on a slightly different time slot. I'm your host, Karen Eisenberg, and no guest today. But before I bring Tim in, I just want to tell you that I am modeling the Die Jerks t shirt from Pearl Islands. This one is a favorite because I get all sorts of reactions when I walk around and, walk into the gym or, wearing a just t shirt that it just says Die Jerks for those of you who can't. This is a very well-known moment, Tim, in Pearl Islands Johnny's season, which we will be seeing, I guess, in about a year.
It looks very Greek. I like the Greek lettering.
That's the best he could do with masking tape. On their shirts, you will see it's
Right.
quite amusing. But anyway, you can find this shirt and many others, of course, at johnnyfairplay.com. And with every purchase, you get a call from the great Johnny Fairplay. That's Jonny, no H. Also, just want to give a short plug up front that if you enjoy what we do here, please consider becoming a patron. Go to adfreensfw.com. You get shows early, you get shows ad-free, you get access to a Facebook group. We do Zoom chats, we do trivia, we have fun. So if you would like to have fun with us, not that kind of fun. Let's not get Tim started here.
No. I was about to tell you a story about this.
All right, please, Tim, tell us a story.
May I? Because somebody suggested to me that I should become part of an Instagram group, and where I can sort of monetize my Instagram, because I've never done any advertising on Instagram, and I've never got any money out of it. And someone said, "Oh, you should do this particular thing. Someone else has done it." And I called this other person, and I said, "Should I be doing this?" And he said, "Oh, no, I don't think you should. It's a little bit over 18." And I suddenly realized, oh my God, it's if I got involved in that, it would be scandalous.
There are many people who make a lot of money as Instagram influencers. And
I would love to know how to make money. I mean, but I think there are some things we don't do. Otherwise, I suppose I would have been involved in the other program by the Circle Makers, which is called Naked Attraction, which and that was always the joke that I had continually with the producers while I was on the show. That
you're going to appear on that show.
No, they must not confuse the one show with the other, because I would find myself feeling uncomfortable, or maybe other people would find themselves feeling uncomfortable. But there we are. I was brought up on a farm, so
use your imagination. Yeah.
There we are.
I'm not the right person to speak to, especially because on Instagram I have about 100 followers. I just started my Instagram really for the show. I really kind of use mostly for the show. So I don't spend time on it. I'm not going to be able to build a following there.
Well, I must say, I'm terribly excited to hear people. I hear from people on Instagram who've actually watched this show on YouTube, and I'm really. It makes me feel very warm inside to know that people are actually watching and listening, and for me, this is my introduction to the other side of reality TV. This is my introduction to watching reality TV, and it's an
fan community, and you're right.
And I feel
and the interaction between podcasts and social media, right? Neither of which obviously existed in the year 2000, has changed the experience of being a reality TV fan so much.
But I think today it's impossible to divorce reality TV from social media, and they're doing the same job.
Mm-hmm.
And at its best, I know I keep raising my eyebrow. I was going to say cocking my eyebrow, but you don't do that, do you? That's a dog that does that.
I think Americans try to avoid using the word cock in general.
All right, I see. Okay.
No. But cocking your eyebrow is definitely like I'm familiar with the expression.
Is that an expression? Sometimes expressions sort of elude me because I every morning every other morning I do an English lesson, a sort of 1-to-1 with a very nice lady, and so and she's quite advanced, and so I feel I'm constantly having to sort of analyze the English that I do, and she's actually pushing me so slightly beyond the textbooks that years and years ago I wrote. So, I've got my own work. I've got my own books in front of me. I think I remember years and years ago.
You wrote a book. I'm still.
I've written
your biography. I don't know. You wrote.
I think I've written about 52 books, but they're all about teaching English and learning English, and they're boring beyond belief. And one. I didn't get paid for all of them, which was really quite annoying. But I did. I got involved in doing the cassettes in those days and CDs for sort of listening along. So I'd stick. I'd be in a class and I'd stick on the cassette, and it would be me saying, "Listen and repeat. Hello. My name is George."
A whole lot easier. You just go in and you just press
this was the point. Well, so when I was teaching, and I was teaching in Greece, and in the evenings, a lot of Greek children go to a thing called frontisterio, and it comes from the Greek word frondizo, which means to help. Well, I think really these little schools are helping themselves to a lot of money, so that. A lot of the teaching during the day didn't happen, and the same teachers would turn up in the frontisteria and teach for money in the evenings. And then there was me, and I would be doing my thing, and we get to the point where I was supposed to press the button and play the tape, and I realized it was me, so I just continued doing all the funny voices. And I remember once the head teacher called me into her office, and she said, she had a very deep voice. "We've had some complaints." And I said, "Oh, what's the problem?" And she said, "You aren't using all the equipment." And I thought, oh my goodness, we're back to the monetized Instagram account. And she said, "You're not using all the equipment." And the problem was I wasn't switching on the tape recorder. And I said, "Well, I made it." She said, "I don't see your name." And she was quite right. My name had been erased. I think they'd given me a Greek name. So Timotheos Yiannakopoulos or something.
She doesn't want you to teach live. She wants you to use the tape recorder.
Yes.
So
yes.
play
Yes.
a pre-recorded lesson. So the God should actually respond to something if somebody has a question.
Yeah.
No sense.
Yeah. It made no sense. And there was another time I was called in because I'd omitted 2 pages, and by that point I was writing the books. And I said, I just know these 2 pages are rubbish. He said, "How do you know that?" "How do you know that?" I said, "Well, I wrote them." And I know, it really is quite a retort. And anyway, so I get out my own books and I teach from my own books, and I do love people who sort of put me on the ball and make me explain the sort of rubbish that otherwise I parrot out, and it's so good for you because you get into a habit of just saying the same sort of rubbish, right. And then they come up with these really good questions. Why? And you think, I have no idea. What an interesting question. And, for me, it's fascinating. For them, it's just a single syllable, which they know will completely wreck the lesson.
Why does something work this way in English?
Yes, why does something work this way in English? And
Israelis have a wonderful expression for this.
What is it?
Lama kacha, which means why? Because. Right?
Yes, absolutely. And but Israelis shouldn't be saying this. I mean, Ivrit is a modern language. Ivrit was an invented language, like really like modern Hebrew, modern Greek, and you've got these 2 languages that have really taken off now, and so you can actually go back and say, why did this emerge, and how did this develop? And I think Ivrit is very exciting because it turns what is a Semitic language into a sort of semi-European language.
And I can tell you, right, in Hebrew, so again, I'm not sure if I ever told you this, but Eliezer ben Yehuda is actually the grandfather of my cousin's husband.
No.
And I've spent obviously a lot of time with him. His name is also Eliezer.
But wasn't he working in France at the time?
He lived in different places. I
Yeah.
don't know his biography
Sorry.
as extensively, as I should be. But and I also know, so the first Ben Yehuda dictionary was, or I'm sure Eliezer participated in it, but Ehud, his
Yes.
son, is really the one who's known for it. And Dora, I never met Ehud, but he was already gone, But I spent a lot of time with Dora, his wife, and
Yes.
they're wonderful. Yeah. And so so my cousin Eliezer speaks about 8 languages. English is his 5th, and he is, completely fluent in it with a very slight accent. And I would listen to Eliezer and Dora speak, and what happens is they would just gravitate between languages, often in the same sentence.
Oh,
without
absolutely.
realizing it.
Absolutely. I know many people who do this, and I find it really tough.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, because when they're talking about the arts, that's French,
yeah.
right? When you
Yeah.
talk about
Absolutely.
politics, obviously that's English. But then,
Yes.
if you're any kind of pain, if you're in any kind of physical or psychic pain, that is German, right?
The language of Freud and
Yes,
E.T.A. Hoffman.
and my and said, so Eliezer's daughter Tal, who's one of my, still very close to, we would just listen to them, and they wouldn't even, like I said, they're not even realizing they're doing it, because we both speak, Hebrew and obviously English pretty fluently. We
Yeah.
could you please just pick one of those 2 languages? No, we're speaking Ivrit. It's like you're speaking Ivrit about 40% of the time.
Yes.
Yeah, but no, I'm
Yeah.
always fascinated by people who can do that.
Yeah, polyglots, and it's wonderful. I knew it was possible, but I didn't really sort of experience it until I was living in Greece, and I had French friends, and the language just flipped all over the place around the table.
That's my point, is that with English, you would probably, for one where you have to go back until, the Middle Ages, you have to go back to Chaucer, or you have to go to Turkish, or, there's so many sources of the
Yes.
English language.
Yes.
So that
whereas Ivrit is much simpler. You know the pedigree of a word, and providing you can work out which vowels. I always have problems with my vowels, but in Russian I have problems with my consonants, which is much darker. Yeah.
You can take the vowels, because again, for those of us who are not, native English speakers, or native Hebrew speakers, that does happen where you
just have a.
But the point is, you kind of know how to pronounce it, right? I mean, you make
but
the vowels.
a lot of my Greek friends who also in modern Greek, the vowels have all been pretty well reduced to 2 or 3 options. So you don't have that range of vowels that you have in traditional pronounced Attic Greek, the sort of stuff that you get in German textbooks, and so most of my Greek friends can't spell properly. And certainly as children, it was chaotic, and I thought it was ironic that you've got a British teacher telling a Greek child how to spell a word, and not quite knowing what that word meant, because words change their meaning. And one of the things I find so fascinating and lovely, speaking to people on the other side of our pond, is that you use words often with their original meaning, and in our case, in British English, that meaning has changed, or accent, or stress, and it's so lovely hearing that.
I've heard that before, and I think not even only from you, that actually Americans speak something that is closer to
Shakespeare,
right? The older, very interesting. Because as Americans, I've always grown up with the opposite: is that we're the ones who bastardize the mother tongue.
No, you just change the knife and fork around, and you had a bit of a problem with tea. That's all you did. Otherwise, you preserved English at the time. And this little, I don't know whether you can see him actually. Can you see it? This
Yes.
little man
Yes.
who came over from the New World was sent back, you kept that English. You would have also kept sort of various dialects, I suspect. And then you've got all the joy of the Irish coming out, the Irish and the Italians coming into New York, and what you've then got is a language which is sort of the perfect migrant language, quite simple, still oddly driven by vocabulary, not by grammar. So when I go off to Russia and I'm trying to teach in Russia, everybody talks to me about grammar because Russian grammar is diabolically difficult. And you think, well, no, you don't need to teach very much English grammar. I've got it down to 10 lessons, and that's it. And everything else is the exceptions and the elaborations.
Well, which is 80% of the language. That's the issue.
Yeah, that's the problem. So it's much harder to teach.
Hebrew has almost none, and that is why it is a much easier language to learn.
Yeah.
In any case, we are 16.
We should move on. By the way, can I put my cards on the table and say I was very distracted because of things which are happening at home, which is one of the reasons our session today is on an unusual day. It's entirely my fault. I did race to the computer on Tuesday just in time to see you switch it off, and I thought, no.
We should just tell people this was basically just a mix-up caused by the fact that in the UK they have already changed back to standard time. And
yeah, absolutely. Well, it's not only that. I'm having cat problems and lots of other odd issues, which I'm sure I will refer to as we go on. But what? So two things. Number one. I did make notes on Tuesday, and I put them down somewhere. I have no idea where I put them. Obviously, it was so stressful on Tuesday. Yes. And number two, I really enjoyed this episode.
Good. So just, is there anything from episode 9 that you feel like?
Oh, I hated it. Hated it. I whizzed through it. I can't use the word whiz in America, can I? It means to go fast anyway in British English. And in fact, there's a little book. Have I got it here? No, it's in the other room. There's a little book which is a wonderful book which I was given when I was a child, and it's illustrated by Ronald Searle, and it's the adventures of a little schoolboy, and it's written in his language, so it's all badly spelt. And one of the books is called Whiz for Atoms, which I suspect probably would mean quite something different in America, but in Britain it simply meant to go very fast. I suppose we go very fast anyway with both meanings.
I've heard your version of it, but like many things, it has been mastered.
Well, we used to have a comic which was given out to children called Whizzer and Chips. Now, I think that probably would be illegal today in America.
Probably.
Or at least suspicious.
So
I subscribe to it. If I subscribed to that today, it would probably arrive in a brown paper package.
Exactly. No, so these clip shows in Survivor are a thing. They haven't done them in a while, but they did them, I guess, when the show was at the height of its popularity. And you will see also at the end of this season, they do everything they can to drag this out and figure out how they can get more episodes so that they can make more money. And they have gotten better in later years about what they will show you more outtakes
but they show the wrong sort of outtakes. This is the problem. What I want to see is outtakes that show the development of character. What they're showing me
exactly is the better. So now these days, it's not only so they don't do the clip shows, but what you do now is if you subscribe on YouTube, will see several. They call them, we used to call them deleted scenes, but I'm forgetting, like
bloopers.
Told me in the chat that I apparently called this show to this episode is Professor Tim Watches Borneo again. I am so tired. I was up. We were podcasting since past 1 a.m. on Wednesday night because of the Big Brother finale.
Has it finished?
36. Yes, it finally ended.
And they've all emerged. Have they emerged for the better?
They have emerged about them being for the better.
Are they all feeling very guilty?
That's a much longer. It was not a great.
You see,
and people
look. I really think if you want to give people sessions in I don't know bias, this bias training it seems to me to be ridiculous, because once you identify it, you can't do anything except for think about it. Like, for example, if a rather nice magician explained to me that one way to get you to choose the number 4 is to say, do not choose 4.
Right.
And then it's in your head.
Right.
You cannot get it out of your head. So I think bias training is doing the same sort of thing. It doesn't matter where it's going to percolate. It will percolate at some point, and possibly not always in the best possible form. If you've got to do bias training, then maybe you've chosen the wrong people.
It's funny you say that, and that is part of a much larger conversation which has been happening in the survivor community about how to deal with the issues around race and things like that. And that really is something that we should talk about in much greater detail, but not today.
I'm so sorry, because today
if we start talking about that, we will never ever get.
Oh no, but can I say today in the UK, one of my buddies, a man called Humza Yusuf. Now I resigned from a political party for him because he'd been insulted, and he's now the Minister for Justice in Scotland. He has some odd ideas. He wants to divorce England and Scotland, but the major platform which he stands apart, I think he's a very commendable man, and with his heart's in the right place. Now, what he was proposing today was a law against hate speech, and this other fellow who I have sort of quite admiration for, because he's very dynamic. I think he's slightly on the wrong side, but he's interesting, and he's talking about, we should have openness. We should be in a position to be able to say things, and an opinion is not a fact, and an opinion is not something to be frightened of. He's right, but we can have an opinion without being hateful.
Tim, this might be the perfect thing for, I always want to do like a one-off between the seasons. And
let's do a one-off. Let's do a one-off on, but we'll have to look at both sides of the continental divide, and see how we are both handling this, because it seems to me that it's being handled with complete cack-handedness in all areas that it manifests.
So like I said, let me even see if we can get some guests. Let's do this properly.
Oh, let's do so.
That would be fun.
Let's do so.
But just going back to the original, I have to unwind our, the conversation we were having. But I think my point was with the clip shows is that they are, like I said, we're trying to do more character development. That's what we were talking about. And
yes, but it didn't.
Right. And like I said, they've gotten much better at that.
Right, good.
But yeah, and like I said, in these days, you don't even have to have an extra episode for it, because every week they will put up 2 or 3 deleted scenes that often are about character.
Right.
And those can be a lot of fun. So that's what they were trying to do here, I think. But most of what they showed us is what they'd already shown us.
Yeah. I don't mind seeing what I've already seen, because by the time I see it again, I've probably forgotten. But so there were things which I saw, which I thought, oh, that looks very interesting, and then I realized I'd got notes all about it. That
I did want to flag that I found very interesting that I do think they did in that show. The one the one conversation I think was important was their ability, their desire, their whatever. I really can't talk today, people. I'm very, very sorry. That's how this got started, right? I was up late 36 hours ago, and because I am old, I am still suffering for it. And so therefore, my ability to connect my brain to my mouth is not what it is on a good day. As I've shared this before, I'm a stroke survivor, and generally I feel like I can fake normal pretty well, but if I get really tired, it starts to fall apart, and that is what's happening here. So I will just apologize to everybody up front for whatever gibberish will come out of my mouth in the next hour or so.
So you were saying about the thing you liked in the
Jerri, so we saw that there was a conversation we saw, at night where Ogakor, they're all in the shelter. Right. And Jerri is, apologizing to Keith. And Tina said, that's all we needed. Right. Just the fact that she realizes that she's a bit of a control freak. That's fine. That's lovely. And I'm so glad that they did show us that, because I do think in the main show, they have really made her out to be, such a villain for doing very few truly villainous things.
Yes, I don't see her as a villain. I just see her as a little bit one-dimensional.
Right.
I would have liked to have seen a little bit.
Trying to set her up. She is
Yeah.
the villain of the season.
There was well, not really, as we know, but there was a what was it now? Love Island. I met some people from Love Island, and it was fascinating because they were quite bright and clever, and yet on the show, the little bits of the show that I've seen, I saw 4 episodes. It was so boring, and on the show, they all seem completely vacuous.
Because it's a vacuous show, right?
Well, so they were telling
conversations. They're not going to show up on that show.
Absolutely, and they were telling me about the very interesting conversations that they were having, and then told me that these conversations were often never even filmed. And if they mentioned anything about a relationship while they were sitting around having dinner, so they never showed us scenes of them eating. So as far as the viewers watching this television series were concerned, these people never had serious conversations. They never ate. They never went to the loo. And all they did was talk sort of lovey-dovey stuff. And that just seems slightly odd.
Well, I think people can't assume that they do eat and go to the loo, but you're right in terms of the conversations.
But they just seem to drink.
Right, but they're not trying to present a full character.
And tell me, where did this ghastly thing Prosecco come from? Because that seems to me like whizzing. The consistency, the color, the bubbles, they're just disturbing.
I mean, I have heard of it. It's a sparkling wine. Right?
Well, yes, cheap sparkling wine.
So in the Jewish community, we have something similar. So it is Bart Nura is a brand, and it comes in a blue bottle, and it became very, very popular about 15 years ago. A couple of rappers alluded to it, so you could even get it in bars for a while.
Really?
Yeah, but it's the same thing. We call it, some people call it soda wine or blue wine, and that's exactly what it is. It is sweet and bubbly and mildly alcoholic, and no serious fan of wine, should be caught drinking it. But I do kind of like the stuff. It's not even really wine. I mean, there's actual wine, and then there's this stuff, which is soda that can get you a little bit buzzed.
Oh, I see. But no, I don't like Prosecco, I must say. And I'm not a great fan of white wine in general, unless it's Greek, and even things like decent Retsina, not really white. It's a sort of rosé color anyway. And the stuff you get in the bottle has had resin pumped into it. If you get the real stuff in the village, it's wonderful. It's been casked in resin casks. Anyway, so I was disappointed with the catch-up series, but the catch-up episode, but I wasn't expecting very much from it, and I did whiz through quite a lot of it. There's a lot of whizzing.
Vote entire that's why I decided not to vote an entire.
Well, no, I thank God that you decided that, because I couldn't really talk for more than 5 minutes on it.
Right. Okay. So like I said, but the one thing that I did enjoy was the fact that they did try to rehabilitate Jerri a little bit.
Yes. Well, I'm afraid the moment I saw that, I realized she was on her way out. It was a sort of desperate attempt to try and repair some of the damage they've done. I think in terms of their edit, they're not ahead of me at the moment, which is really annoying. And I've not revised any of my opinions about who I think is going to win, by the way.
Yeah, what's your current opinion?
Oh, I still think it's a toss-up between Corey and Colby and Tina.
It's a perfectly reasonable opinion to have.
I think my temptation is it's probably going to be Colby, because it's a boy thing. Right. And this is two
who will win a Survivor show or any kind of reality TV show. If you think about it, right? He's the golden boy, right? He's perfect.
Yeah, he's perfect. But I also think
he's very capable in challenges, and he seems to be not stupid, and it makes perfect sense that he would be crowned.
Yeah, I think it's a strong possibility. But if it's a toss up between the two, Tina is working very hard at the moment to get the potential jury on her side, and she's. I don't like it. I really don't like it because it just seems to me to be quite false. But I think she's. What's clear from episode 10 is she's sort of winning. She's winning that game hands down. She's doing very well.
This is a thing, and it's funny that you have flagged this, because I don't know if I would have said this as explicitly in Australian Outback, but you're not wrong. There's something called jury management, which means be aware that these that if you make it to the end, you need these people to like you.
Yeah, because they've got to choose between the two of you.
And clearly,
the three of you.
Did not subscribe to this theory, but it's possible that Tina did, and that she.
I think she.
She's definitely right. My point is that good players manage juries.
And I thought so. Last week, I thought Tina was just doing a sort of pumping up positive vibes, and changing this character in order to get votes. And I don't think she's doing it now. I think she's looking beyond that. I think she's fairly secure. I think she knows she's played a good game, or she's not necessarily played a good game. Mm-hmm. I think other people, Nick has played an appalling game, I'm afraid. And what's the chef called?
Keith.
Yeah, Keith. Appalling game. But they've slipped under the radar, so it's only a matter of time.
Right.
Weeks before they're off.
But slipping under the radar is also a game move. The trick
yes, I'm sure it is, but you've got to slip under the radar, maybe, and at the same time you've got to have enough to convince people that you have a character worth saving.
My point is that there is such a thing as doing it deliberately. I don't think Nick did it deliberately. It's possible that Keith did. To give Keith a little bit of credit.
Really?
Look, he was smart enough to latch on to Colby and Tina, because you're right that he probably wouldn't do. He's not a mastermind, so you have to know yourself going into these games. And so if you are the person who is capable of running the game, that's great. And if you are the person who is capable of jumping on the back of the person who is running the game, that's what happened in the Big Brother finale.
The person who I think is the long shot, and a serious one. I wouldn't be at all surprised if we got to the end and he was in fact the winner. Is Roger, because he's just universally liked.
Yes. And he did say something interesting also in the clip show. And I think he elaborated on something he said before, which is, maybe I went a little too far with this Kentucky Joe stuff, right? I need to go out there a little bit more.
What's Kentucky Joe?
Kentucky Joe is Roger's nickname.
In
the first episode.
Right. I'd forgotten that.
Right. And that is the thing, is that he's a very likable guy, but on top of it, he has very deliberately, because he told us, he's deliberately crafted this persona of, I am old, right? I am a farmer. I'm not. I'm no threat to you.
And is this? So this is not quite what he is.
I mean, it is what he is, but on top of that, he's a teacher, not only a farmer, and and the point is, he's a smart cookie.
Yeah.
He is one of a long line of characters, that have continued all the way to Elaine, of people who have a certain accent, who people will meet and figure that, they're probably likely to be less formally educated and they're easier to manipulate, right? But they're normally nice people.
Right, I see.
And you will see this in spades. The first time we'll have a big character like this will be Big Tom in the next season in Africa. There's a gentleman that I hope that you will love.
Yes.
Who is a goat farmer in Virginia.
Oh my goodness! Goodness! I hope you're going to get him on so I can talk to him.
You may be able to.
We can have goating discussions.
Yes. Absolutely. And Tom is one of the funniest people that's ever been on Survivor. But again, and maybe I shouldn't spoil this for you, but you'll figure it out pretty quickly. Big Tom is not a dumb guy at all, but he did a good
Yes.
job of convincing the people around him that he was.
Really?
Yes. Yes. So you will enjoy
Yeah.
that.
You see, I think there's a lot to be said for the impression of. I think on one occasion in the circle, I was accused of being naive, and I think naive has a negative meaning today. I think naive is a perfectly reasonable concept. I would probably prefer the word innocence.
Yes.
I don't think I am terribly innocent. I think I've got a sort of very, very creative and rather bizarre mind, which goes down some very strange rabbit holes. But it would be nice if one projects not so much. I don't mind. I don't mind whether it's seen as innocence, but I think if one can project a certain amount of vulnerability,
right.
That's that really is the key
to
making television.
Right. I would say the most important thing on any of these shows is you want to seem vulnerable without being vulnerable.
Or perhaps vulnerability is the wrong thing. I think it's openness. It's openness to new experiences, is openness to meeting new people. Right. And in my case, I'm conscious of doing it, but I also enjoy it. And I think because of my background, studying theology and philosophy, I'm very comfortable with 2 or 3 ideas which are conflicting at the same time, and one of those may be, I know everything that's going on, and I have no idea what's going on, and right. I can quite comfortably
entertain both of those at the same time
with complete conviction. I'm not bluffing when I say I really don't know what's going on, and at the same time I know exactly what's going on. It just depends which part of my mind I wish to access, I like to live in the present if it's at all possible. Certainly if you're in the middle of a conversation, I love living in the one of the things I realize I'm not good at, and I've got to learn how to do it, is I did an interview the other day for a TV channel, for a news channel, and I think they had about 5 or 6 questions for me, and they went through all 5 or 6 questions, and I think they were struggling a little because I was answering the questions directly. I don't think that's what you're supposed to do. I think you're supposed to elaborate and go off on one. And I think I'm not so good at that. I like to think on my feet, and I like people to see me thinking on my feet. And I also like to be ready to say that I'm wrong. I think that's I think
these
that's
are the things that made you without knowing it. You were the perfect reality TV character for this reason, because you are so open to new experiences, right? Because you like meeting different people, because and those are some of the best moments in Survivor. And again, we will see this in Africa, where
I think Colby has a lot of this, by the way. Colby has an openness, as I think does Roger, and in contrast, Jerri comes across as quite closed. I'm afraid I think Tina comes across as quite close, but Tina is has got this pattern of be nice, which is very difficult to resist. Yeah, I like people who are genuinely nice, and I feel that Tina is the sort of nice person with a knife behind her back.
Right, but on the other hand, if you want to win a reality TV show, newsflash, pretending to be nice is often a much better strategy than actually being nice. Because if
you could be nice,
nice, but normally you have to make at least one move, if you will, in the game. If you're just the nice person, okay. So again, just back to the Big Brother finale for just a moment.
I'd love to know who won.
Okay, so
was it one of the races?
Won, the person who we knew was going to win, but the way he did it was very interesting. We thought that he was going to take the person who we all thought was his biggest ally, who has already won the game and actually knows how to play the game. And he didn't do that. He cut her, and he took Enzo, who was the nice guy. Everybody loves Enzo. Enzo played one of the best social games I've ever seen on any show, but that's all that he did. But in his defense, he did say, right, I can't play like that. Right. So what I did was and I think he used these words, I jumped on the back of somebody who knew how to do that. And he did lose 9-0 because social game is extremely important, but it's not enough. I was going to say it's not enough. Look, if he was up against somebody who was hated, right, and that has happened, he would win. But the problem is he jumped on the back of somebody who was both very strategic and was able to not really alienate anybody.
Very clever.
He lost. Whereas there have been other times where if he had somehow been able to get to the end with somebody who, like Nicole was certainly, I mean, I don't want to say she was hated, but of those three, she was the most hated.
Right.
So it's possible that he would have gotten a few votes just because people didn't like her. But nobody disliked Colby. I'm going to get Colby and Cody confused because of this, because they're both in the same kind of.
Isn't Cody the little boy in The Rescuers Down Under?
Gosh, I mean, if I've seen The Rescuers,
I think it is. Yeah.
40 years, so don't even ask me. But in any case, the point is that you need the more
Marafuta
you have, the more skills you have, and the more buttons you can push, right, the better off you're going to be. Not generally, I mean, again, Cody was very unusual in the sense that he's social, he's strategic, and he's physical. Okay, in the sense that he can win complicated competitions. People like him, and he understands how to maneuver, through the game and understand who to keep around and who to get rid of. Most players can't do all three. Many people who have won shows can do two. Right?
Yes.
It's hard to do it when doing just one. It has happened. Certainly, well, physically, if you can just kind of win yourself to the end, that has happened in Survivor. And there's at least one glaring example, and I'm sure there are others, of somebody who really did nothing in the game except to attach herself to somebody who was really, really, really hated. And then at the end, got the money just because she was not him. Right?
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
But you have to be with somebody who is really hated.
I must say, if I could face the thought of striding around the place in shorts, which I don't think I can, I would quite enjoy being on Survivor.
I'm just imagining you.
I won't do it. No, I won't do it. It will be white suit or nothing at all. No, it won't be nothing at all. No, it will be a white suit. I won't do it. That's it. It's
very hot and humid in Fiji. Do you really want to be?
It was very hot and humid in the circle. In the interests of fashion and propriety, I am prepared to sweat a little.
Well, but you do understand that what happens is within the first day you will cut the sleeves off your jacket. And
no, I will not. That's what they said to me in the circle. That's what they said to me when I was working and living in Greece. In fact, my partner met me on the end of a street, and he thought he was coming away from my flat. He'd been taken to my flat, and he saw me at the end of the street on the top of a little sort of hill, and I was apparently wearing a full tweed suit and bow tie and waistcoat, and it was the height of summer.
Okay, so
I haven't changed my.
Well, you were hurting. You were doing it in that outfit.
No, I was teaching at that point. I was teaching. I was teaching English, I suspect, probably. And so if I wasn't teaching, I was. Sometimes I was even editing books. I mean, but it was extraordinary. I remember editing a very strange book about Alfred Nobel, who, of course, made all his money. The Nobel brothers made all their money in the oil business in Baku, in Azerbaijan, where, of course, we have a crisis at the moment with Nagorno-Karabakh, and all these things are so interlinked, and international characters and companies.
Which is what's wonderful here. But let's go back to Survivor, because at some point,
yeah, sorry.
So at the beginning of episode 10, is this a regular
Yes.
5 minutes in and we actually are starting the episode? Well, we did talk about episode 9.
We talked about episode 9, which I was bored the pants off me.
Yes.
So yeah,
So
I've been defiant for 40 minutes or so.
no, not defiant. Look, people come to listen to you talk about whatever pops into your head, and it's lovely.
It could be anything.
Some of the conversation should be about Survivor.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Just a little bit. So when we come back, to our cast of characters, it's rainy and it's cloudy, and I don't understand. So they relocated their camp and they took the canoe away from them.
Yes.
For reasons that are not completely clear.
Not completely clear at all, and they've got. Well, there's a crocodile in that river, so maybe it's a very dangerous river, and they don't want people in it.
I think they've always been around the same river. So I have certainly there have been times in Survivor where they just build a new camp just because, right? Because it's drama, they're tired, and then they have to reboot, and we saw that this time, in this season. That they thought they were going to go to the Cooch camp, which it seemed was pretty nicely set up, and they said, nope, you're going to build your own. It's also possible that because of the issues, they've told us a few times that there's some issues with flooding and raining, and there was the discussion about the fact that they built the new camp in a dry creek bed. So I'm wondering whether they may have relocated them because they were concerned about one of the other camps being in danger. Again, I have not found anything about that, but it's possible.
Yes.
But even so, I say, but with the canoe, that's the only thing that makes any sense to me, is that they took the canoe away because perhaps with the waters rising, they didn't want to risk, somebody not being able to.
And of course, a lot of this is simply about, I will have control over one small part of your life, just simply to demonstrate I have control.
True. Like I said, look, as I said, they do many, many things just to create drama. But in this case, I think that there was something else going on, at least with the canoe, because they already realized that there's some issues about, their nutrition. And then they take the canoe away so that they can only fish from the bank. So again, I wish I had a better answer about that. I should have asked Jeff Varner. I will speak. Yeah, I've gotten a very nice message from him about that interview.
Have you?
Yes.
How lovely. I so enjoyed meeting him. I must send him another message.
I'm glad that he still feels okay about having done it.
Yeah, it was an absolute joy.
Yeah, it was but in any case, they
and I think a very significant conversation.
I think it was great. But the point is that we are seeing them be very hungry, and one of the reasons that they are so hungry is that they don't have a canoe. And we've seen already that fishing from the bank, sometimes works, but it's not nearly as good as going into the deeper water, which I don't know much about fishing. That might be about the only thing I know about fishing. But in general,
Well, we also know from today that you don't fish in cloudy water.
Yes.
So it doesn't seem to work, which I don't quite understand that. I thought cloudy water would encourage the fish to hide in the cloudy bits, and then
or they might not be able to see so clearly that the lure is in fact a lure.
Yes, exactly. But then I don't fish. I know people who've gone diving in the Thames, and apparently you can barely see 5 inches in front of your face. So. Yeah.
In most of the world these days, unfortunately, there's enough pollution and that's why it's so amazing when you see something like the Great Barrier Reef and you with the clear water.
Have you been to Istanbul and seen the cleansing of the Bosphorus?
Interesting.
It's now blue. And it was very dirty when I was there in 20 years ago, and now it's clean.
Okay, so
and they put a channel around the back of Istanbul to sort of clean the water, and it's worked. So it's quite a remarkable piece of aquatic engineering.
Yeah, Tim, I've just decided. You know what I need to do? I need to be able to wrap your knuckles from across the pond. I will need to send you a little. What did they use? They use a ruler when you were in school.
I plead hemophilia. Don't hit me.
That's right. So how did they get you? How did they get you? How did they motivate you in school?
They didn't tell me about all this, and they threatened me with serious hitting. and I was of course terrified. But in fact, I went through the whole of my school career without being beaten, and I think I was the only boy in my school who was not.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, was it because they knew of the hemophilia?
Yes, I think that was the issue. So
Right.
but it did make me look like a sort of goody, which I was, I suppose, in some ways. So it was slightly convenient, but I used to have my naughty moments. But,
Oh, sure.
they were well
Still do.
well
That's why we love
designed.
you. We still love you. But let's talk about this reward challenge, because this I found very, very funny, right? That they know so it's going to be some sort of an obstacle course, and they're going to run in teams of two,
Oh
one guy
yes.
and one girl, right? You remember this?
Yeah. No, very, very much. Very
And
much.
and they really showed us. It was, again, very little commentary, but we saw multiple times. So there was a conversation before they actually had the challenge.
But how did Colby write all their names on pieces of paper?
That is a good question. I'm guessing in terms of the paper, we know that they have the Bible, and somebody may have had a pencil, because I was wondering about that. Generally, they don't have access to pencils and paper, but normally also they would just, they can draw straws, if you will, often before challenges that will happen all the time. Again, maybe not in old school Survivor, but there will be, like in reward challenges, they will just divvy them up, and they just tell us. Sometimes it's a schoolyard pick, sometimes it's random. So they could have done that, but here they were clearly hoping for the drama of how are they going to divide themselves up.
Yes.
Because as Jerri says very reasonably, everybody's going to want to be with Colby. And Colby is not particularly happy about this idea. But lo and behold, they end up together. Now you're saying,
how did Colby tire so firmly of Jerri? Well, because he, in the early episode, when they were in the creek together,
mm-hmm.
although he was sort of saying, "Oh, I'm not really into this as much as she thinks,"
mm-hmm.
That seemed to me to be an afterthought,
Mm-hmm.
because he looked quite contented.
Yeah,
I know what contented
again,
cats look
I don't
like.
want to psychoanalyze people I don't know, but I'm just thinking about like things like the fact that she was so. Look, Colby is a Texan, right? He's an old school gentleman. Okay, I'm sure that he enjoys sex, and I'm sure he likes a woman who enjoys sex with him. But he may not want to be with somebody who is basically, faking orgasm and screaming, right? Because they're
And
creating
manipulative.
chocolate and making it clear that part of their chocolate fantasy involves putting it on him, right? That is a bridge too far. He wants to date a lady, in his mind. And Jerri is very far from being, an old school, like I said, Colby wants to date somebody like, Tina's daughter, right? That's what he's looking for.
Yes.
He's not looking for Jerri. That's just my guess. She's very outspoken. She's very loud. Also, she has not been particularly nice to Keith, and it's clear that he likes Keith.
Mm-hmm.
So that is my guess. Yes, physically, he finds her perfectly attractive, but he just realized very, very quickly that, this is not what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
I have not heard this from Colby, but that's my guess.
And yet Jerri seems to be oblivious.
Absolutely oblivious.
Which is extraordinary.
This entire episode is about basically Jerri being oblivious, right?
Yeah.
Yes, she was quote unquote blindsided, but she was only blindsided because she's so oblivious.
Yeah.
Right. So we go back to this challenge,
which I'm afraid.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
I even if the program hadn't tried to make her look bad,
mm-hmm.
that alone makes her just look awful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It makes her look thoughtless, self-obsessed.
Right.
And then when you get to the little seashell moment,
mm-hmm.
it's just sort of, it's painful.
It is painful.
And there's an element of, one of the reasons I liked this episode is because there's an element of hubris about it. Mm-hmm. It's got all the makings of Greek tragedy.
Yes, this is another one of these episodes that I feel like was very, very carefully crafted.
Well, I think it was crafted. I think it was a gift to the producers. I don't think the producers had to do very much.
Right.
But Jerri gave them everything.
Right, but the way that they were able to construct it, so it kind of So Act 1 is this reward challenge.
I was going to say, do you remember that? Do you remember that book, Name of the Rose? And at the end of the at the end of the book and the film, they torture somebody, and the main hero says, "Ah, yes, when people are tortured, very often they literally confess to everything, and they don't hold back at all." And I felt this was Jerri. She just doesn't hold back. She just sort of she cannot help herself.
And that is why she is such an amazing reality TV character, and why they brought her back twice more, because that is exactly what they want.
And is that exactly what she does again?
She was good TV, but
she is good TV, and and she looks good as well, but she's it doesn't seem in some ways to be a very long journey from one ear to the other. There doesn't seem to be a lot of obstacle in that process. I hope she's not suddenly our guest tomorrow next week.
No, I was actually out to her. I was not able to. But so I haven't thought about her, but her emotional intelligence is the issue. Yes, that she is completely oblivious to or I thought that she was, until we saw that extra scene in last week's episode, or episode 9. So she did have some awareness, right, that maybe she was rubbing people the wrong way, but she didn't have a lot. And I am sympathetic to her, because I would say 30 years ago, I don't think I would have been as bad. I don't think I was as clueless as to the effect that I might have on people, but I was pretty clueless. And Jerri is certainly, as a character that speaks to me, I understand how it could have happened. But I just wanted to make sure that you noticed during that obstacle course, right? The only reason we had to watch any of that is Colby throwing Jerri around like a beanbag. You did catch that, right?
I did, yes.
He's not encouraging her. He's not taking her by the hand, but he wants to go to the Great Barrier Reef. And he's pissed that if he goes to the Great Barrier Reef, he's going to have to do it with Jerri. So he's like of two minds about this at this point, right? But he understands that he drew the short straw. He gets Jerri. He wants to be there. So he just basically, like I said, picks her up by the scruff of the neck. And every time she has a problem, he just throws her over the obstacle.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. Quite extraordinary.
And that made it clear, if she didn't, you would think that at that point she would have figured out maybe he's not that intimate, right?
Oh, I think she would have thought, oh, I'm being manhandled.
Yes, I think she thought it was foreplay. Right.
I think she did, yes.
And in his case, it was an expression of disgust about what he really feels about her. But she picked up on none of that, which sets us up so beautifully for Act 2. Was there anything else about that challenge in itself?
No. No.
Act 2 is they go to the Great Barrier Reef. Okay.
Yes.
And at this point, Jerri is saying, I won 2 rewards in a row. On the one hand, that could affect the votes, I guess. But on the other hand, I don't give a flying crap about it. And if you didn't know before that point that Jerri is going home in this episode,
at that point you knew. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. This was.
In case you missed the fact that she's clueless, let's set this up for you.
Yeah. This is where we really enter our Greek tragic mode.
Exactly.
A dramatic irony.
Yes. So we see these, long.
It's better than Oedipus Rex.
Yes. So we see these long sequences of them flying over this beautiful terrain. They see a waterfall. They finally end up on a boat. And Colby says, we're not going to talk about the game or strategy. Let's enjoy the day. AKA, Jerri, please shut up and let me enjoy the Great Barrier Reef. I will pay you just a bit of attention because I am a gentleman, right? I think a lot of people in this situation would have not even really pretended that they were having a good time. But Colby is Colby, and he's going to be on national TV, and he doesn't want to look bad. So he is trying to be friendly enough to Jerri, right, without giving her the wrong idea. And she's talking about the fact that this is a great first date.
Oh, yes.
And it really
and trying to drink lots of wine.
Sorry?
And trying to drink lots of wine. I thought you didn't drink or eat before you went swimming.
Right. Especially the drinking. Yeah, I mean, the eating, right, the fear is you're going to get a cramp. But the drinking, look, one should not drink and swim. But, I'm sure that there were many, many people watching them, and they were fine. Oh, and the other thing that was cute is so when they're eating before they go snorkeling and they're admiring all the food. I don't know if you caught this, but the first thing Colby hands Jerri a brownie.
Oh yes, I remember the brownies. Yeah.
It's like, no, but that's the first, like, he's like, I know you want this. He knows what's going on. I think she might even know that he knows what's going on, but I just found it was a very, very funny moment. So they eat. And then we go back and forth. We go back at camp. They're all lying down on the sun. And there was that wonderful moment where there's a crocodile also sunbathing, right? So they're sunbathing on the bank, and then the crocodile is sunbathing on the rock. We go back to the reward challenge, and they go.
And they all look so miserable, didn't you think?
Well, they are pretty miserable. They are very, very hungry. They told us up front that they only have about 2 to 3 days of rice left, and they're fishing from the bank, right? So they are miserable. And I will spoil the fact that they're going to get more miserable as the season goes on. Yeah, so that's why they're showing us this now. They've over the entire season we know that they're hungry, but this is not the first time that they've told us that they're having real trouble with food, and that's why they're, I think, setting this up now.
So they're less than a week away from the actual end, aren't they? Although it's going to take us a bit longer to get there.
It's 42 days. And I should have counted. Well, no. Back in those days, it was easy. It's 3 days per episode. Now it's a little bit more complicated. So we are an episode of the real episodes. Eight real episodes have taken place. So we are on day 25. At this point, I guess day 26. Right. The episode started on day.
So we've got at least another 10 days to go.
More than that, you've got 17 days, because generally Survivor seasons go 39 days. Australian Outback goes 42.
And they've only got enough rice for 2 days.
Mm-hmm. They've got a problem. And again, that will be addressed much more next week. So we get to see Colby and Jerri go snorkeling, and we get the point that she's talking about the romantic setting. It's a hell of a first date. It's the perfect honeymoon without the sex. And then we get Colby says, it couldn't be further from the truth. I just want some downtime away from the game, aka I hate you, right? But I'm going to be diplomatic about it. And girl, this is not a date.
Yes.
So that was lovely. Then we go. Okay, so they get back.
Have they met up since? Do you think?
Sorry. Oh, they have in two additional seasons.
Oh, I see. They put them both in.
Every time when you have Jerri, you need Colby, and when you have Colby, you need to have Jerri. So this side is also one of the reasons I didn't even try so hard to find Jerri. I mean, I sent her a message, but I did not do the kind of compulsive stalking I did of a couple of the people from Borneo, because this is just, like you said, act 1 of the act 3, the 3-act, drama that will consume 10 years.
Really?
Yes. They made good TV together, so they wanted them to do it again. And then they did it a third time. They had less time together. But that's the point, is that, and this will happen in Survivor again. Sometimes, characters can be beloved, but often that they want them to clash with other people, so they will bring them back together. Mm-hmm. Colby and Jerri are forever linked in Survivor lore, as much as Colby wishes that were not the case. Because I really, this is not his brand, right? His brand is being a gentleman. Right.
So we've gone from Greek tragedy to Dante. So isn't this wonderful? Yeah. This should be one of those episodes which is sort of given out to school children.
Yes.
This will show you all about the subplots and and the nuances,
if you will.
Yeah.
So, but the one thing that's really important from this episode, I don't think it's very important, but you may not have known about it. It was a big deal at the time. They come back to camp, and Colby gives everybody a piece of coral.
I thought that was wonderful.
And Jerri is pissed because she realizes, wait a minute,
and how stupid she'd been.
Right.
Yeah.
But the fun thing about this, which did not.
But aren't you? You're not allowed to pick coral, are you?
There you go. This is exactly what I was.
That was exactly what I wondered. And I thought, maybe you're allowed to pick seashells.
It was. I'm not sure about seashells. He picked coral. Now,
did he really pick coral?
Get off the reef, or it was on the beach. But it is illegal, and I think it's a $55,000 fine per occurrence, and he broke off however many pieces of coral.
No.
This was a huge thing. Yes.
And was it huge in
In Australia, they were fine.
in 2002?
That's paid $100,000. And
So
they apologized profusely. Yes, this was
so the show was fined.
yes. I don't think Colby paid the fine. I think the show did. But yes, everybody was up in arms, including the Australians. They were pissed.
So at what point did they realize, after they screened it, or why would you screen this if it's going to sort of?
Well, first of all, I mean, I did see most of the press was, after the episode, but I saw some stuff that even the week before it was starting to percolate, because I'm sure that there were Australians, right, who were involved. The other thing also is it's not just the quarrel, though the quarrel is, the more egregious violation, but they also so that's why I was talking about these beautiful helicopter shots. Apparently they were flying in areas that they were not supposed to be flying. It's a bird sanctuary. You cannot fly a helicopter
right
along the route that they took. So yeah, they got reamed. But the funniest thing was the Salon, right, which is an online magazine now, had an entire feature on this, a long one. And one of the things they were talking about, how will this affect the game, right? Because they were citing the Survivor rules and saying, you may not break the law. So what's going to happen? Are they going to, evict Colby from the game? And I'm like, idiots. This was pre-recorded. But there were also, again, people in America who thought, Colby's going to have to go home now because he broke the law. It was a big deal. It was a big deal. And like I said,
but it seems that the production company didn't realize that this was a problem.
That's the point, is that I don't break.
Of course, they should have done that. One of the producers should have, whoever was was filming with him should have advised him. And
now they certainly would. It's one of the, and they brief you before the season about all the things that you can and can't do, the things you can't eat. There's certain, species that you're not allowed to kill because they are endangered, things like that. Now, certainly you get that. And they certainly should have had that, with Colby and Jerri. By the way, we're going to the Great Barrier Reef, no souvenirs. I'm assuming it didn't happen because Colby seems like the law-abiding type. I don't think he thought it if it had ever occurred to him. And again, if you're not Australian, I don't know that people would necessarily know that, he was not taking huge pieces. He took a little tiny piece for everybody. I understood what he did. It was absolutely wrong. It's not his fault. And CBS paid the fine and I think learned from it.
Yeah.
And then we have another quote from Jerri, just to show how not whatever the opposite of, tuned in to the rhythms of her tribe. She says, I see Colby and me as evenly matched. I want to sit with him at the end. And now he's got one over on me.
Yes.
There's an argument, actually, that Colby should have been trying to take the Jerri to the end with him so that he could do, the classic reality TV move of take the most hated person with you. And then, like I said, all you have to do is not be the most hated person. Similar to what we will see in season 19. But I think he just wanted to get rid of Jerri. I don't think he was thinking, and he's the kind of guy.
Didn't he say in the last episode that Jerri had to go?
Yes. This has already been percolating. This is not the first time that we have seen signs that Colby might be willing to get rid of Jerri. But I'm saying in modern Survivor, if you're a really good Survivor player, you at least consider the possibility of taking this person. Like I said, just because who's going to give Jerri the money?
Yeah.
Right. But again, Colby.
But there is always the slimmest chance, and wouldn't that be disturbing?
Oh, right, certainly. But it is a very, very common reality TV strategy of take the hated person. You want to take the weak person, you want to take the hated person. But back in 2000, 2001, you take your friends, right? We certainly saw that in Borneo, and and they're certainly beheading for the same idea here. And we haven't seen any sign that anybody's going to backstab their friends, not yet. But that whole thing with Jerri, that the poor girl thinks that Colby is going to take her to the end, and that she might, and that they're evenly matched. I was just, it's the facepalm emoji, right? Because at this point, I do feel genuinely sorry for her. So they are setting her up to look like an idiot.
Yes, absolutely. So did she have a really tough time after she came out?
It was worse after her second season, but even after the first one, she was not liked.
So why would she want to go back?
I would have to see. I'm not sure. I mean, there must have been interviews. She must have answered that question. I don't want to speak for her. My guess, right, would be that it's probably a combination of she thinks she knows what she did wrong, right, and she
What she
wants to
did
be an
wrong is a
actress,
character.
right?
What she did wrong is a character flaw. It's not about playing the game.
No,
It's
but
who
even
she
as
is.
right, but you can and query whether you can change who you are, but you can
I
certainly
think
see
you
yourself
can.
on TV. You can see yourself on TV, say, "Oh, that was bad. I don't want to be that person. Let me try to not be that person."
But TV is a wonderful leveler, isn't it? It's like the Rabbie Burns
Hmm.
poem to see ourselves as others see us,
Exactly.
and that's quite a revelation, isn't it?
There's that, and also Jerri, wanted to be an actress. They told us that at the beginning of the
Oh,
season.
I didn't pick that
Yes,
up
she
at
was like
all.
a waiter or something,
Right?
an
Has
aspiring
she done any acting?
I have not. I'm sure I know that she did some. I should have looked up her entire resume.
One one of
All
the
of this,
problem.
so Kel got a bunch of beef jerky commercials after this. I'm not sure if you
Really?
understand how
I
famous
would love to
they were.
give Kel a pile of beef
These,
jerky
these
commercials.
people, I'm saying these people were famous, so I'm sure that Jerri. I'm
Got
sure that
something.
she was on a bunch of shows. I should have prepared this better for you so that I could really give you the answer. But yes, all of these people got a tremendous amount of press and many, many opportunities from this.
Right. Right.
So if they're coming back a few years later and giving her that opportunity, and again, and she feels like she can fix what went wrong the last time, that's
Yeah.
my guess. That's my guess. She will not be the first person who was hated on TV, came back, thought it would be better, and gets even more hated the second
Well, Joan Collins made a complete career out of it, didn't she?
time.
You know, once she realised her sister had started to write bestsellers, it was down the lane to opprobrium. You know, and
Right.
she did it well.
Right.
Even Stephanie Beacham
Yeah.
was not really a match for the great Joan, our Joni. But Stephanie Beacham was very good.
Yeah.
And to actually hold the scene with Charlton Heston, I think is quite an achievement as
Yes,
well.
that in itself is an achievement, putting everything
Yeah.
aside.
Um,
So so now we get to the next act is the prep for tribal council, like the
mhm.
same way that almost all of these episodes are structured. So Colby says, "Look, Ogakor is going to take Kucha out." Right? We knew that, right? Because they lost that one. We're going to have another pagonging, and he says, Nick is more dangerous than Elizabeth and Roger, so he goes first. Now we don't really haven't seen much of anything about how dangerous Nick is.
No, we haven't seen anything of Nick.
Right. But look, he's a young
We've seen him strolling around.
right, but he's a young, healthy guy. He seems to be in good shape, right? Whereas Elizabeth is tiny, right? And Roger is old. So it is a perfectly reasonable, again, not having been on the beach with them, reasonable assumption that Nick is going to be next up. But he says it depends on who wins immunity, which of course means we know who's going to win immunity. Um, so we have this three-part immunity challenge where they said it's balance, not strength, which is true. I almost wish they hadn't told them that because
Yes.
the big guys would have been trying to just muscle and they would have lost.
Yes.
Right. But they gave them that heads up. So step one, or the first round is you try to knock your opponent off balance and into the water. Right. The second round is this kind of shaky beam. And
Yeah.
then the third one is almost a combination of the two. You're on these unsteady platforms while you're
So,
trying to get the other person.
did you notice how confident Probst was about explaining what the process was? Do you think he's tried it secretly?
I mean, there is now there is what they call the dream team, where they run.
Yes, I just wonder whether or not
It's
he
done.
goes through some of these things because he has such confidence about explaining them.
Right. Interesting.
Um,
Back then, he may have been more involved because it was a much smaller operation.
yeah.
These days, trust me, Probst is not trying challenges.
To get-
So
yes,
I was at the Survivor 37 finale. I was able to
Yes.
get to the room where it happens. And all I saw was Probst, before the show, walking around, constantly being trailed by a bunch of producers and a light, and somebody whose job seemed to be to just keep, with a powder puff and just, or a little, a powder brush and just keep powdering him. right?
It's very important.
Right. So God forbid he should show us any signs of, perspiration under the lights. So yeah, this is who he is now.
Well, that destroyed that destroyed electoral chances, as we
Yes.
know. So, the powder puff is very important.
Yeah. So, but we have this, and by the way, I think it's fair to say certainly number 1 and number 3 we have seen again, right? This basic challenge will come back because it is fun, right? Because it's not as a strength challenge, right? You can see, it would not be surprising if the small person beats the bigger person, right? So we
Mm-hmm.
get so first we see Roger and Keith, right? Roger beats Keith. This is fun. So the next one is, it's Nick and Jerri. And did you catch Colby saying, "Put it around your neck"? Colby must have been horrified when that made TV because, again, this is not who Colby wants to be.
Yes.
Right. But he's over it. He is so over it.
Well, I think he must feel a bit stalked, actually, because she doesn't hold back, does she?
No.
I had a stalker years ago, and on one dreadful occasion, I opened my front door, and there she was standing outside the front door in the porch in the pouring rain, and she said, "I was just passing. How did she know my address?"
Yeah, that's scary.
It was quite scary, actually. Yeah. It got much worse. It got much worse.
I'm so sorry you had to go through this. Whereas with Colby, is fine.
No,
but Colby, I think finally, like I said, is ready to make it clear to Jerri that this is not happening. I'm not sure if she heard it though. But so Roger beats Keith and Jerri. Colby, of course, beats Tina. And Amber beats Elizabeth. Semifinals are, I don't have to go through the whole thing, but of course, Nick wins. Nick does beat Colby. And that again, so it's not a strength challenge because Colby,
yes.
I'm assuming that Colby is.
And so if Nick had not won.
Nick had not won before.
Yeah, if Nick had not won.
Right, what would have happened? Then Nick would have gone home.
Then Nick would have gone.
Yes. Because even though Jerri is getting on Colby's nerves, at this point in Survivor history, this is how you play the game. Right, you stick with your allies from the beginning, and you pagong the other tribe. Right, that is how one wins the game.
Yes,
and even the fact, so even when Nick won immunity, they could have voted off Elizabeth or Roger, but there is this kind of perfect storm. First of all, they are up by 2. Right, it was 5-3 at the beginning of this episode. Right. So they can vote Jerri out and still have an advantage.
Mm-hmm.
And, and the other thing is they really like Roger and Elizabeth, right? They've made it clear to us. Nick, there's nothing bad about him, but there doesn't seem to be the same amount of attachment just because he seems like a very quiet guy.
Yeah.
Right? So he's fine, but he hasn't done anything to endear himself to the extent that, they want to save him. Whereas with Roger and Elizabeth, right, we see, and again, not for
I actually think winning the immunity probably was as dangerous for Nick as losing would have been.
Oh, because then they know that he can win, you mean?
No, because he's drawn attention to himself for the first time in the entire series. They realise he's there. And say, oh my God, we've got to get rid of him. We'd sort of forgotten about him.
Right. And again, the more modern Survivor, that is exactly what would happen. But here, they've set this up for us. None of this is surprising, but it is surprising in the sense that this is the first time in Survivor history that somebody really breaks with their alliance, right? To save somebody from the other tribe, right? At the expense of somebody on their own. It just has never happened before.
Yes.
Again, may not be a big deal in retrospect, but back then it was. And so they're casting their votes. Oh, and another great. We have so many great Colby quotes here, but we see Amber and Jerri, of course, want Elizabeth to go, right?
Mm-hmm.
Elizabeth tells Tina, and Elizabeth is really playing this game, right? That she says, "Look, I'm voting for Jerri." Right. And this is the kind of maneuver you will see over and over again on Survivor. I understand that you're conflicted, right? I understand, you can't really tell which is the better path. Elizabeth totally understands where Tina is. Tina can't stand Jerri. I'm sure she's made that very clear. But she's in your tribe, and it's a big game risk, right? Because
Yes.
what if, right? So she says, "Look, I'm voting for Jerri. Just want to let you know, right? Roger and I'm assuming also Nick is going to vote for Jerri. So consider it, right?"
Yeah.
And Colby says, "Look, I'm ready to get Jerri, but it's a lot of money." And he says, "I can't believe I'm sending Elizabeth home instead." Because it really does, with both Tina and Colby, it's very clear to them that they care about having the good people win. And this kind of stuff really pisses me off. I mean, from that standpoint, I hate the move. Because
Really?
you want to give the money to somebody who's deserving. No, let's give the money to the person who played the same day, the best game, right? And I would argue,
Well, I'm not entirely in favour of that, but equally, I do see the money as a MacGuffin and sort of an irrelevance.
It's not even the money. People, even if you don't worry about the money, people just want to win. Look, and it's funny, like on the UK, right? That's the whole thing, because UK game shows. Well, so answer this for me. I'm confused even. And maybe it's because it was not on the BBC, because on UK reality shows, right, they can't have a cash prize, because on RuPaul's Drag Race, when they did it in the UK, they did not give them any money, right? Normally you get like
they can. We had a cash prize in the circle.
I know, but I know you did, obviously, but I was wondering, because so what they did is the winner got like the opportunity to fly to Hollywood and make a, online docuseries. But normally they would do something like that and they would give them money. And in the UK, and they didn't get anything like that. And so I thought it was against the rules.
I have no idea. I didn't see it, I'm afraid. I did meet some of the contestants.
Oh, from UK.
Yeah, it was lovely, because I didn't really know who they were. Of course, I knew they stood out like a sore thumb at the thing I went to, because they're so tall and so striking, and they seemed to know who I was, which was, the ball is on the other foot. And I did feel very, 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 very humble, and they were wonderful. We had such good conversations.
Yeah.
And I loved meeting them, and I felt sort of. But my partner watches the show.
Yeah, you mentioned that. No, but Tim, if you don't mind, I'm going to give you a brief research project, because also at the end of every episode, also normally people get a prize. They get a gift certificate for something drag related, or they get a hotel stay or something.
Yes.
And they just got a pin.
Really?
Pin when they wore them like badges. So I really did think that they're not allowed to give them.
I think they are allowed to give them cash prizes. I think it's just the BBC being a bit cheap.
That's what I'm saying. It's the BBC. It's not right, because in the UK, obviously.
Was it the BBC? I don't remember. Yeah, I think it was the BBC that did it. I don't remember very clearly. But anyway. Because I wasn't really paying a lot of attention. But it was interesting meeting them, and I think that was at the point when the show was either literally just finished, or was still in the middle of its run.
If you feel like any of them might respond to an invitation, I would love to have a show about.
We'll see. We'll see. I haven't really. I'm not sure whether I've got their connections, but
anyway, let's talk offline. But I would love to do that. Yeah, I've become such a big fan of drag, and it's very recent. Like, I checked out RuPaul's Drag.
Oh, but drag is wonderful.
Yeah, I started watching it just because my friend Brett started podcasting about it, and I really expected to hate it. I'm like, okay, let me watch.
But you go back to Harvey Fierstein in the early. When was that? 86 or so, 84, 85, 86, that sort of time. And he was doing his show, what was a Torch Song Trilogy, and at the same time, La Cage aux Folles was doing its run.
Right.
And he'd written that as well. And it's just such an extraordinary art form. And again, that goes all the way back to Shakespeare. It's very. Right.
That's the thing. I had not huge history. Appreciated. I mean, I was aware of Torch Song Trilogy and La Cage and all of that, and it's one of those things where I have never, personally, I've never been opposed to anything that adults want to do. I really don't care. But it was not something that I really embraced as an art form until I really understood what they had to do, because not just, especially when they're first getting started, they make their own costumes, they do their
Yep.
own makeup, right? So it's just, there are so many things you have to master. I had no idea.
Well, Britain, we had this huge tradition of drag, which was family entertainment, and certainly when I was a child,
Really?
there was a character called Danny LaRue who was just absolutely family entertainment, and actually, if you go over to Turkey, drag there is just routine. It's routine television, and the drag artists will go and perform for President Erdogan.
Right. Wait, but it's an Islamic country, no?
Yes, but drag is perfectly acceptable. It's perfectly acceptable.
That is
as performers,
right.
And everybody's in on the joke. But they're tremendous performers.
I agree. I just thought that they were going to be, completely against it because they're, so puritanical about anything resembling sex.
Yes, no, but belly dancing was a manly thing. It's only recently it became something that women were doing.
Wait. You're saying belly dance originated with men?
Absolutely. They would put cups around their waist and put spoons in the cups, and that's what produces all the jiggly. It was a thing for soldiers to do.
Okay, but why did people? But then, what was the attraction? Because normally people watch belly dance because they like to watch women move that way.
Entertainment. Well, that's just the prurient bit. But the development of the art form, the development of the dance was a masculine thing, I believe.
Wow, no idea.
And a thing done by soldiers.
In Israel, it's not that unusual. There are like that again because it's that part of the world. And so, a lot of my, Ashkenazi, very light-skinned friends, this is their hobby. It's fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some people who are very, very religiously observant because the classes are all women. They only perform in front of women, and they get very, very good.
Yes.
I know that it started with men. It's fascinating. Yeah. So, like I said, I'd love to have a drag show. We can do a show without it, obviously, but if we can get a drag queen, we will absolutely.
It would be wonderful. It'd be wonderful. Well, maybe somebody's watching.
Yes. Well, and I actually have an idea that a friend of mine who podcasts did get a drag queen on her show. So perhaps, and she might be a Survivor fan.
Oh, excellent.
I think she was a Big Brother fan. Again, this is quite a while ago. But, the point is I have a couple of ideas in terms of figuring out which drag queens might watch Survivor, or drag queens who might have watched The Circle.
Oh, well, there was some drag queens who were on the live show, I believe, commenting on the show quite early on.
Right. I'd forgotten about that. Okay, we will. Tim, stick around after this. We are going to find these people.
I don't know how.
They are clearly drag. They're Circle fans. They will know who you are.
Yes.
Right. Hopefully, they'll want to do a show with you.
Well, I would be delighted. I'd be delighted.
Yes. Yeah, I do want to do a show.
As I say, I just think it's a. Well, I spent most of my university career running up skirts and things for theatre. So I realised very early on that if you're designing a show, it's more effort to design and then explain to someone else how to make it than it is just simply to work out how a sewing machine works. And I think I got quite competent on the end of a sewing machine, and I remember at one point I was teaching and I was asked if I would direct an opera, and I said, well, yes, but only on a professional basis. And they wanted, I think, 400 children on stage. It was a production of Carmen, and I used professional principles, and I costumed everybody, so they had 3 costume changes, and I did every single costume myself, and I produced the scenery.
They never heard that W.C. Fields about don't work with children and animals.
I love it.
I have worked, so I've done a bunch of, stage crew and things, not on a professional basis. I've never been paid to do it. But yes, I had to wrangle children in the last show that I.
Children are easy. You just enthuse them and make sure they move from one place to another. And you,
Right, 400 of them. So we had about a dozen, and that was a lot, but it was manageable. And
well,
Jerri,
it was a school, so of course we had lots of them, but
right.
it was tremendous when you get a lot of people on stage. But I had to rebuild the stage in order to do it, because to have that number of people on stage was a little bit alarming. And I built a false proscenium, and there's a lovely sequence in Act 3 of Carmen, where they're on the mountaintop and with the goats. And there's a sequence where the men sing, and then suddenly the women and the boys sing, and there's no way to get the to get the women and the boys suddenly on stage to do that. So it's really complicated. And I thought, oh, why don't I just put little windows all the way around the proscenium arch? And I'd studied it with stars. And at this particular moment, all the windows flew open, and the children and the women stuck their heads through the windows and sang out. And I remember taking the Orthodox bishop. He came as my guest on one night, and he turned to me at that moment. He said, "Oh, you believe like Origen that the stars are inhabited by angels?" And he was very excited.
That's very creative. We would just kind of sing from the wings. We talk about wing singing all the time.
Yeah, I think if somebody's got to sing, then we ought to be able to see them, because this is their moment. And they've learnt the piece. It's a great shame that the Tosca thing. Great shame to have people singing from the wings. I have been known to been a situation where I'm the producer, I'm running the light board, I'm wrangling a child into a costume, and I'm singing at the same time. Oh yes, absolutely. I've done that. And at one point when I was at university, I can remember sitting in the wings. Doing one show, performing in one show, making a costume for another show at the same time, and I also remember doing a Shakespeare play where I was killed off in the first act, and then running across town to be in another show where I only appeared in the second act. In the second act of the same show. Yeah, and I was in two shows at the same time, which I thought. Did they want you back for the curtain call though? No, they didn't notice. I'm not very good at curtain calls. I tend to run away. Oh, that makes sense, because you don't like adoration, right? You seem to be very. I love adoration, but I just think I must say I'm not keen on the director taking a bow, but on the one or two occasions when I've done it, there's something wonderful about walking on stage. Yes. And you hear this sort of eruption of applause, and for you, and I think I've done it as an actor once or twice, but it's so much more noticeable if you've not been on the stage. There's just it is extraordinary. It is the audience acknowledging the fact that there are, obviously the people on the stage made the show, but there were also a lot of other people with whom, it literally would not have existed. And starting. Yeah, it's true. It's true. Right. It's true. But I love the theatre deeply, and I miss the theatre a lot. But it's I've never made any money out of the theatre. I've always come out of these things sort of wondering how I'm going to survive, and I think that probably is part of the thing about theatre. And as a director, I was always determined that my actors were paid. So it was. I always saw myself as being quite low down on the list. But, yeah. But speaking of expecting applause and not getting any. Right, we go to trial. Oh dear me! Yes, and we see poor Jerri, who really took it very graciously. Yes, right? It's a walking time bomb, and you can just see it happening. Right. Yeah, so it is an execution. Yeah, I'm afraid in orbit now. Even before this episode, and certainly from the beginning of this episode. But I do think that during tribal, Jerri realized what was up. Yes. But not before that. So that still counts as a blind side.
And poor Roger, again, who is one of these people who I'm sure is very hesitant to say anything critical about anybody, especially on national TV. And he says his comment was, his voting confessional was, most days she gets up in a good mood, right? He's I'm not saying anything bad her, but you got to watch out if she gets up in a bad mood. And if Roger
is saying that
he doesn't like you, yeah. So like I said, look, we weren't there. Clearly, she has done something to really alienate her castmates.
When I see that sort of thing, I think, oh my God, I hope no one's saying that about me. and
you don't have a mean bone in your body, Tim.
Oh, I'm sure I do, but I at that point, I felt sorry for her. You see.
Oh, so did I. My point is everyone has faults. Okay. I'm not, you are not faultless. I am not. No one is. But I'm quite confident that nobody.
But is there any way she could have gone without me not feeling sorry that she'd gone? I wonder.
Again, the way.
Because I wouldn't have felt sorry halfway through.
Right. Right. But, and I do think that one scene in the previous episode does help in terms of realizing that she, that she is incapable of apologizing. She just didn't know that she was alienating people.
Yeah. But there was also a scene towards the end where she said that she was sort of tired of the game or something. I don't know. It was, or when she was on the barrier reef, that it was nice to get away from the game and that sort of game persona. But I think that persona is her. That's the problem. Yeah. Well, but I think she doesn't have a lot of real self knowledge.
Well, I think she got a lot more from. She is not the first, she may have been the first. She's not the last person to see themselves on TV and say, "Oh my God," right? You get some people who, and they will even claim, obviously, they created the footage, right? But they will say, "Oh, it's manipulated. I didn't really say that." They call it frankenbiting, where you pull bits out from different confessionals to mash it together to show something that didn't happen. That does happen on certain really low quality reality shows. It does not.
Oh, it happens? No. You can take the adjective away. It happens. You want to structure a narrative.
No, but I'm saying, real frankenbiting means you take one word from here and one word from here. And you make something
that would be corrupt.
But
people on these shows, you're watching. The camera is watching you over a long period of time. You're bound to say something dodgy at some point, and you just rely on the fact that these producers want you actually, for the most part, to look good.
But that is but Tim, that is your mistake right there. You assume that the producers would have your back because they want you to look good. In your case, you're lucky that they did.
I was very lucky.
But they will also pick out other characters who will not have that protection. And
yes, I think particularly in my series, James was not so lucky, and I think was done. I've not seen enough of it, but I've heard a lot. What little bits I have seen, he just looks. They've found angles for him which make him look villainous, and he's so far from being villainous.
But is he upset by the way he was portrayed?
Yes, so was I. Once I met him, I realized, this is not. But I'd also felt that during the show. We'd had conversations which were not aired, I believe, where we bonded in a really deep way, and it wouldn't have mattered who he was.
That was clear even from the show. I was.
Was it?
Yes, right. You liked him.
Yeah, I liked him.
Yeah.
And
also, by the way that you like him after the show, right? When you met him, again, because we've spoken about, I have a feeling that I would like Jerri too, right? Most of these people are quite lovely, but when you put somebody in this situation where they are starving and they are not sleeping and they are under a tremendous amount of stress,
yes.
People behave in certain ways.
Well, as I say, up until the actual the actual council, I must say I was quite prejudiced against Jerri, and the actual council. You just sort of feel, oh, poor dear needs a hug.
Yes.
And I'd like to find out, what motivated her and what she learned and how difficult it was to live with that, because that would be tough.
Yeah, I'll have to find
and to do that sort of thing on national television is brave.
Mm-hmm.
and
Look, we will
tough
certainly
and difficult.
talk about this, before we start watching All Stars, which again is about a year out. There will certainly have a discussion first about, where people have been and their reaction and things like that. And like I said, I can certainly send you links because there was a lot of press.
Right.
And I certainly do understand your idea about, and some people, don't ever want to go back after having a bad experience, but some people, are foolish enough to do it more than once.
Well,
The real
I'm always told that you don't close a door, but I have instincts, and it's I think there's some things you do and you don't really repeat them because
right.
that's done.
You could do a show as long as it's a show that you were in control of.
Oh, I'd love to do a show, but I don't think I would be keen on being locked away in a building again, and with a production company that could do anything to me.
No, but I'm saying you and Woody traveling or something.
Oh, that would be charming. That would be charming.
Yeah,
I'm not opposed to I'm not opposed to anything really, but
now you would know what you're getting into, and see that's the issue.
This is the point. This is the point. I just don't think it's true. I don't think it's true. Nobody knows what they're getting into with reality TV, with this type of reality TV.
Oh, people do.
You don't know because you are not in control. So you might say, "Oh, I can't control this," but it's not, and it's not just about the actual footage which is aired. It's the whole genre is.
But again, I have many friends.
It's about surrendering control.
I'm sorry. I keep interrupting you.
Sorry.
Lag. I keep interrupting you because there's a lag.
No, don't worry. I'm easily interrupted.
But I'm saying we're having this other problem just so that people know. But that is totally a tech problem on my end, and we're going to deal with it. But again, I have so many people who I know who have been on these shows. And again, if you are a super fan, you do know. And one of the things that you know is you don't have control. And if you give them certain kinds of footage, they are going to run it.
Yeah.
Right. And so many people do freely make that decision. And some people regret it. Some people don't. But again, as long as you are fully informed, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. The problem is that you really didn't. You thought that these people were going to have your best interests at heart. And that's not how this game works. And you were treated much better. I mean, I
was treated very well.
You are beloved on the edited show.
Yep.
They adore you.
I was treated extraordinarily well.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew it at the time.
Mm-hmm. Right. And
no question.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Nobody goes in saying, "Okay, I'm going to take two or three of these people and ruin their lives," right? But they're going to have their heroes, and they're going to have their villains. And
I think Karen, you're too kind. I think there are people who go into these shows thinking, "I'm going to ruin these people's lives."
No, they want to make good TV. They want to make good.
No, they want to have power. Good TV is a secondary issue. I think I think giving somebody that degree of power is a very dangerous gift, and there's very little control over it.
Well, that's the issue. Like I said, for me, it's all about full information and full consent, which you didn't have because you didn't really understand what you were doing. Like I said, people talk about speak to somebody like Elaine, and even then, she might have been a little bit naive, but she basically knew. I think Johnny certainly knew. Well, but Johnny was.
Johnny is a gift to television, and
Johnny was a professional entertainer beforehand. He was a wrestler.
Yes.
Right, and if you don't understand that that's theater, right, then I can't help you. So he knew, and also he was playing a villain. I mean, he enjoyed it, right?
Yeah.
It actually helped him.
I think if you go out of your way to play a villain, I think you can do it. I think maybe we should wrap up because I'm going to have to. Yep.
Oh, okay. So let's do some housekeeping and get out of here. We're even going to skip if you want to find Tim on social media, if you just do Professor Tim Wilson on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, it will pop up. For his videos on YouTube, please check out Zontul Films. Let me see if I can do it like Tim. ZONTULFILMS.com. I can't do a British accent.
Yeah,
so.
It's your pronunciation of the final letter of the alphabet.
The Z. Yes, pick that
There
up.
we are. There we are.
So for us, let's see. So on Survivor NSFW, fortunately, we have finally put Big Brother 22 to bed. But please check out, besides our coverage of the finale on Wednesday, that was fun. We had Jillian Parker from Big Brother 19, but also please go back to Monday. I believe it was last Monday. The days are blending together, and check out our time with Chicken George of Big Brother 1 and 7. He was so delightful. Again, just one of these, lovely, lovely characters. And I should see if I can get him to do a Survivor episode because you would adore him. He's just a
Excellent.
lovely, lovely man. And if you want to, and he is responsible for one of the most important, you want to have moments in Big Brother or, reality TV history where somebody shows you just how badly they want to be in the game. It was just lovely. There was basically a competition, which was, what will you give up? What will you do to stay in the game? And it was like, will you burn your clothes? Will you shave your head? Will you dye yourself, jump into a vat of blueberries and dye yourself blue? It was, yeah. And he did it all.
No.
It's the only competition he ever won. Because that's how badly he wanted to be there.
Oh, no.
Please check out our coverage of Chicken George. It was everything. So next week we're doing something slightly different in the sense that we are going to have Nicole Anthony of Big Brother 21 and 22 tomorrow. Now, the difference is Nicole has watched very little Survivor, right? Normally I bring in people who are either, Survivor experts, people who've been on the show, people in the press, whatever. When I was telling Nicole about our show and about you, and I said, have you, she said, she's only seen a bit of Survivor, but she was so enthusiastic. She desperately wants to meet you. And so we're going to turn the tables, right? Normally, the guest and I are educating you about Survivor. We're going to turn the tables, and you're going to start educating somebody else, right?
My goodness, no!
Nicole.
Oh my goodness!
Because
that puts a lot of responsibility on my shoulders.
And she is, and you will like Nicole because she is very much the character archetype, same as yours, right? She was the beloved person. Right. She's
lovely.
Just this person. She's been in the Big Brother house twice, has never said anything remotely objectionable. She's just, she used to be a preschool aide. Her podcast is called Hello Friends. She's never met an enemy. Everybody is she's a lovely, lovely person. And so I think this will be a wonderful show, even though, like I said, she's not somebody, she has a lot of, reality TV experience. And obviously we'll talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
But she's not a Survivor expert. We know that. We just figured we'd play around with that a little bit.
That sounds lovely.
So we will let Tim go, but please, we're going back to our normal time and channel next Tuesday at noon Eastern, 5 p.m. GMT at youtube.com, Survivor NSFW. Take care, everybody. Stay safe, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.